Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue, and in this video I'm going to look at the Tier 7 Premium Japanese Heavy Fighter, the Tachikawa Ki-94-I. Hello there, and on the tarmac outside my hangar, here we have the Tachikawa Ki-94-I, one of two aircraft in a project, a fighter interceptor project. The other being the Ki-94-2, which also features in World of Warplanes. Don't confuse the two, they're very different planes. And this was intended as a aircraft to tackle American bomber streams and featured very heavy armament. At least that was the proposal. The claims for the performance were dismissed as unrealistic by the Japanese Army Air Force, and this never made it beyond mock-up stage. And the other aircraft in the project, the Ki-94-2, only made it as far as a prototype. World of Warplanes have chosen to make this aircraft feature that very heavy armament, as you'll see shortly when we look at the numbers. But if you don't want to look at a spreadsheet, use a link below the video to skip ahead to another part. So here is the spreadsheet for all of the Tier 7 heavies. There are 8 of them, as you can see across here. I'm going to take a moment to explain how the spreadsheet works. If you already know that, then feel free to skip ahead to the discussion of the statistics themselves. And the Ki-94-1 is in columns C and D. And then each of the other heavies has 2 columns of its own off to the right here. So there's filling E and F, the Arsenal BB-10, the G and H, and so on and so on. Down the left we can see the information in the hangar UI, the headers for it. In the case of gun armament, it's been supplemented by information from a third-party website where it's available for auto aim angle, dispersion angle, and overheat time. And the statistics of the aircraft are in this table that I'm circling now. I hope you can see that. Colour coding: green is best in class, light blue second best in class, light purple third best in class, and then a gold colour behind the name of the aircraft indicates that it's a premium or a reward plane, as indeed the Ki-94-1 is. Now I reverse the logic using red colours for worst in class figures down here, which we'll take a look at in a moment or two. For the purposes of the comparison, the configuration of every aircraft was taken back to stock, ordnance where available was mounted, equipment was removed, the pilot sent back to the barracks, and the modules are all top. So let's take a look at the statistics of the aircraft, and let's start with the business end, the gun armament. Straight away you can see green colours for both rating and DPS, best in class figures. This aircraft hits really hard. And that's by virtue of the fact that the armament is a pair of 37mm cannons coupled with a pair of 30mm cannons. This is a powerful aircraft and can easily take down bombers and other high hit point pool aircraft. The range is a little bit short, not too surprisingly for this sort of weaponry, at 1903 feet. You can use equipment to improve it. We'll discuss that in another part of the video. As far as the main armament is concerned, the auto-aim angle on 37mm is a miserly 1.5. You're going to have to aim quite carefully, especially as the dispersion is 0.6, which is at the top end of dispersion for cannons, unfortunately. And the overheat time is a rather quick 3 seconds, also not too surprisingly for such heavy-hitting weaponry. It's not really much better for the 30mm. The auto-aim angle is slightly better at 2 degrees. But the dispersion angle is the same at 0.6, and the overheat time is 3 seconds as well. Just to quickly explain, auto aim angle is the amount you can be off target by, and the game will correct your aim and allow you to hit your aircraft. So obviously a bigger auto aim angle, and it's often quite large for machine guns for instance, means that you can be off target by more and still hit your plane. Dispersion angle is the way the bullets or shells spread out from the muzzle of your gun as they leave it. So obviously at longer ranges the dispersion will be much greater. Overheat time is self-explanatory, I should think. Now as far as hard-hitting aircraft are concerned, the next most powerful aircraft is the Zwilling, a rating 42, DPS of 720. This is with top modules, all 30mm cannons, which I think most people would probably mount these days with bombers in the game. And the range is fairly similar. Auto aim angle is also fairly poor, and the dispersion is also fairly poor. So on weaponry, you can see that the Ki-94-1 against its main competitor is clearly superior in terms of its hitting power. The Arsenal VB10, quite a different concept here, has got 20mm but also 12.7mm machine guns that can strip down aircraft very quickly as well, but in a different fashion and at slightly longer range with the 20mm. And then we're starting to get into a couple of machine gun aircraft, the Eagle and the Tiger Cat. The Ki-94 has a 57mm cannon, so you need to be careful about going head on with that because that will wreck you at 3,500 feet. And a couple of 20mm that can finish you off at 2,100. I would be careful about head-ons with this aircraft, but we'll talk more about that in the way I've set up the aircraft. There is an alternative configuration I'm going to show you. The Hornet is not really an air superiority heavy, and probably, if well flown, is going to be spending quite a bit of time doing ground attacking and not up very high in the air. You may not see those too often unless you go low. And then the Tupolev is a completely different sort of heavy, a sniper. 3,444 with a couple of 45mm cannons as well, so watch out for those in the game as well. But that means that apart from the Zwilling, there isn't really another aircraft like the Ki-94-I in amongst the heavies at Tier 7, and that's a bit of a surprise because this is actually what you classically think that heavies are all about. And there's no doubt the Ki-94-I does destruction of enemy targets really well. As far as ordnance is concerned, it is carrying a couple of 250kg bombs. That's actually third best in class, although it's not devoted to attacking the ground in the way that a Tiger Cat or a Hornet can be. They have far superior ordnance, and you need to make use of that to get the best out of those two aircraft. Nevertheless, it is pretty useful. Shoot down a couple of aircraft over a target. You've then got the option of perhaps taking out a couple of gun emplacements to flip it. Alternatively, say at a mining plant, these two 250kg bombs will easily together take out a single secondary target and perhaps help your team flip that. Survivability, well, it's a chunky looking plane, but as far as heavies go, it's on the fragile side. So try to avoid rams, particularly with other heavies if you can, because you're not necessarily going to win. You have got 400 hit points, which allegedly is third best in class, but take it from me. You really want to try and avoid ramming in this heavy against anything other than light fighters. And the fire resistance is something to keep an eye on as well, as is traditional with a Japanese aircraft, got a tendency to burn. So you need to think about that when you're setting up your equipment and your pilot. Airspeed, it's very much of a muchness across the Tier 7 heavies. There isn't much to choose between any of them in terms of overall rating. The cruise speed is on the high side, it's second best in class, which is useful. The maximum boost speed is third best in class. It's a question of whether you want to try and improve how fast the aircraft is generally flying, or whether you want to try and accelerate quickly and hit a high top speed quickly, as to what equipment you choose here. But the long and short of it is, if a heavy gets on your tail, you're probably not going to be able to outrun it, and you're probably not going to be able to dive away from it either. So there's a warning. Watch the map and try not to get into a situation where you're going to give an enemy heavy an advantage over you. And certainly, if there are two enemy heavies flying around, you need to be very careful about going anywhere near them. Manoeuvrability is not your friend either. This is a flying brick. There is a less manoeuvrable aircraft, the Tu-1, but then that could snipe you out of the air at 3,500 feet. You're not going to do that with the Ki-94-I. Any other heavy that gets into an engagement with you, you are probably not going to be able to outturn. Altitude performance, it's sort of in the middle. It's neither great nor poor. Again, the figures are fairly close together. You're probably not going to be flying above too many heavies too often, and you may find yourself occasionally a little bit below some of the heavies such as the Zwilling and the Ki-93, but it's probably not going to be too much of a factor. Let's drop down into the worst in class figures. Well, of course, there's nothing to report on as far as the armament is concerned. Clearly the best armament for a Tier 7 heavy. Ordnance is third best in class and ought to be used. Survivability, you can see red appearing there, particularly that fire resistance I'm going to draw your attention to. If we look at the airspeed, one thing to notice that the 20 seconds boost is on the low side for a heavy. It's worst in class along with the Zwilling as well, so you need to manage your boost. Don't be heavy with it. Manoeuvrability, awful lot of red there, not surprising, as I said, this is a flying brick. And then the altitude performance, neither here nor there, and probably not going to be too much of a factor in fighting other heavies. So where does that leave this aircraft? Well, given that, except in the one situation, and even that has caveats, you're going to be vulnerable to other heavies, you probably want to concentrate on trying to take down bombers, enemy ground attackers, and to flip a sector, perhaps use that ordnance to take out a couple of targets. You want to avoid certainly engagements with two heavies unless you happen to be on their tail and they're not paying you any attention whatsoever. Or you want to try and get into a head-on with them, and that you need to be careful about as well, but you're going to need to be at full health. As good as this armament is, the armament on several of the other heavies is probably good enough to do a lot of damage to you at slightly greater range in most cases, and that's going to give you a problem. There is a counter to that, which we'll discuss when I come to talk about setting the aircraft up. Do not fly into sectors on your own into a lot of enemy red aircraft. You will get shot down, and pick your engagements with care at all times. And then, if you can get on particularly bomber streams coming from a command center perhaps, you could do very well in this plane. Here we are back on the tarmac with the Ki-94-I, and I'm going to discuss how I set the aircraft up, plus a couple of alternative configurations that you can consider, and pilot skills. Now, the first thing to mention is that the aircraft is specialised, which means that all of the equipment and consumable slots are available. Let's have a look and see what you'd be missing when you first get this aircraft. And of the 4 equipment slots, and notice there isn't one for the airframe, you'd be missing one of the forward-firing weapon slots. Well, that's quite important. You're going to be hampered by that, because it's important to set this up the way that you want as best you can, and both slots available is better than only one slot. As far as the consumables are concerned, you'd be missing a slot on the engine. Just pop that back into specialist configuration like so, and then we'll have a look at how we've set this aircraft up. So what we have on the cockpit slot, well, you've got 2 choices, one of which is engine armour, or cockpit armour, sorry, or the gun sight. Well, the accuracy of the weapons is far more important than protecting the pilot. You can do other things there, which we'll discuss. So it's a gun sight. And with 0.6 dispersion on both of the cannons, that's quite important. We look at the bonus characteristics. I don't think I've spent time looking at this in the past. So what we have there are the top 3 selected: chance of inflicting critical damage, chance of causing a flyer, and more critical damage. I'd probably drop at least one of those. I'd select the accuracy, and then I'd probably drop another one of those, probably the 2 criticals, and pick off the other accuracy figure there and improve the accuracy by another 8%. And you might even consider having the pilot's resistance to injuries selected as well, and dropping all of the 3 that I've got there. And if I were reassembling this equipment, I probably would pick off the bottom 3 characteristics. When it comes to the engine slot, I think there are 2 choices which are obviously better than the other 2. So I reject engine armour protection and lightweight power unit out of hand. The uprated engine is a possibility, but we'll discuss the pros and cons of that in a moment. I have a combined injection boost system mounted, and that improves the airspeed currently, the boost speed I should say, to 457 miles an hour, and that's up from a base of 438, so that's quite a big increase. It won't do anything for the cruise speed, but I like to be able to go fast in an emergency. There's another reason why I like the combined injection boost system, and that's because it doesn't have any effect on the survivability figure, particularly the fire resistance. This is low, and if you mount an uprated engine, it will go lower still. And if you mount the uprated engine, I think you have to do at least one of 2 things, and maybe both here. You'd have to mount a fire extinguisher as opposed to a first aid kit, and there's a reason why I think the first aid kit is a really sensible choice here. Or you'd have to look at your pilot skills and use a precious skill point, probably on fire resistance. I'm going to guess you probably wouldn't use it on firefighter, because that requires a high angular velocity to extinguish a fire, not something that's easy to achieve in the Ki-94-I. First aid kit I prefer to use because you will be trying to shoot down a lot of bombers with rear guns, a lot of ground attackers with rear guns, and even other heavies with rear gunners. And if you lose your pilot to injury, your accuracy is so woeful that you may very well end up losing your aircraft as well. So I like to make sure my pilot is healed instantly. As far as the combined injection boost system is concerned, on bonus characteristics, you'll see I've picked the engine cooldown rate both times for 15% improvement in how quickly the engine cools down, i.e. how quickly the boost comes back. And then I've also negated a little bit of the effect on the boost availability by selecting the 5% boost availability characteristic there. And if we just quickly look at the airspeed again, whoops, closed it up, the boost duration has gone down from a base of 20 seconds to 18 seconds. If you don't have that 5%, it's 17 seconds. Just pop an uprated engine on and see what the effects are. I think I have an ultimate level piece of equipment lying around. I do. Let me show you immediately that the survivability, the resistance to fire has gone down to what I consider to be a dangerous level of 31. And you would have to take measures to counter that, as I've explained, with either a fire extinguisher or pilot skills or both. But what it does to the airspeed is to improve the cruise speed by 90 miles an hour to 381. That's from a base of 362. You may find that just generally going faster suits you better, but you will have an impact on your boost speed, although your boost duration will go up to the full level of 20 seconds. So think about that one. As I say, I'm going to press reset here and put the combined injection boost system back on. You may think that the uprated engine suits you better, but certainly you need to be careful about your choices and how they affect other pieces, other considerations with respect to consumables and pilot skills. Well, if you need to think hard about what you're going to put into the engine equipment slot, it's positively tricky when you come to the forward-firing weapon slots. You have three choices. I have long gun barrels here and a set of experimental bolt carriers, but you can also mount gas-operated action, and there's an argument for mounting any two of those three pieces of equipment in any combination. Let's just talk about the pros and cons of what I've done and then look at alternatives. So the long gun barrels are mounted to compensate for what is a fairly short range of 1903 feet. So here we've got 10.3% firing range increase. This equipment is uncalibrated, so there's more to come. If we just look at the bonus characteristics very quickly. There we go. Chance of inflicting critical damage. Damage inflicted by forward firing offensive armament and burst length have been selected. I would actually concentrate on the burst length there and also the 5% accuracy, and then probably increasing the firing range of the forward firing offensive armament again as well. So I would pick at least two different characteristics there. Now, what kind of effect has it had on the range of the weaponry? Is it critical? Well, not critical. Useful is how I would describe it. The base is 1903 feet. Here it's gone up to 2092. Actually, it's gone up to 2099 here. Not sure why there's a difference. That will get you into range of bombers a little bit quicker, and I think that's important because the less time you spend being hit by their rear gunners, the better. But here's the thing. I have improved the DPS of the armament. It's up to 857 from a base of 800. But I have noticed in flying this aircraft that even with the highest DPS for Tier 7 heavies, other heavies with normally their extra range very often will be able to inflict serious damage to you or even shoot you down before you can shoot them down, although you have, in theory, a much better DPS. And there's something you can do about that, which I'll demonstrate in a moment. Let's just look at experimental bolt carriers for the moment, and this improves the burst length of forward firing offensive armament. And if there is a choice of equipment which I think is probably to be preferred on the slots for the forward firing weapon, I think this is the one, because you've got 3 seconds of overheat on both cannons, so improving the burst length is going to be really important to you. And what we've got here, cooldown rates, 2 of them selected, and 2% rate of fire, which increases your DPS. That's actually, I think, where the 857 comes from. There's also a 5% rate of fire here and another 3% rate of fire. I would probably dump the cooldown rates and go for a rate of fire here across the board and get a total of 10% rate of fire increase from these experimental bolt carriers. So what would the gas-operated action do? Well, let's go and mount one. I've got some experimental gas-operated action equipment here. And let's just have a quick look at the bonus characteristics. Again, this is improving the rate of fire, which is improving your DPS. We'll discuss that in a moment. You can improve your burst length here, and you can improve your burst length a second time, and then you get 10% rate of forward-firing offensive armament. Now, bear in mind that on experimental pieces of equipment, the bonus characteristics are slightly different to the standard equipment. So you're going to have to think about your choices here. But for this one, I'd pick off the 2 burst lengths and probably the 10% cooldown rate of forward-firing offensive armament. Now, even with this equipment, this one is fully calibrated, but with the wrong burst characteristics, bonus characteristics. We've got the cumulative damage up to 984. Now, I'm told by a good friend of mine, thank you very much, Quinlan Kleeksveld, that with tweaking of this particular setup, you can get this up to 1100. And if you've got special project equipment, I guess you could even get it up even higher. But that's a rarity in the game these days. Now, what would that do? Well, those head-ons that I've found a little bit of trouble with are probably going to be a lot less troublesome. With 1100 DPS, you're going to be knocking down enemy aircraft just so much more quickly that probably they're not going to be able to inflict really serious damage on you unless they can do it at long range before you shoot them down. So, I'm going to be experimenting with gas-operated action on this aircraft in future, and we'll see how we get on. The moral of this story is that think really hard about your choices on the forward-firing weapon. They are going to significantly change how you achieve your results. Just before I talk about consumables, I've actually taken a moment to mount the different equipment on the aircraft here, and I just want to point out that on the gas-operated action, the bonus characteristics you actually need are the 2 5% burst lengths and the 5% damage inflicted. And if you configure that that equipment and this piece of equipment as follows, with 3 rates of fire, which I mentioned previously, there you can see the cumulative damage has gone up to 1101 feet, and what you've lost is about 130 feet of range, and we'll see how that goes. On the consumables then, because I've chosen the boost mixture injection system, I've been able to mount quite happily a first aid kit, which I think really helps. If you're going to get your pilot shot out, you can heal him straight away. Pneumatic control assist, well, yeah, what else could we choose here? Emergency control system I don't think would make much difference either. Exhaust bleed inerting system, you might consider that, particularly if you've mounted an uprated engine instead, and in fact I think that's probably the right piece of equipment for this aircraft, even without the uprated engine, because basically you're not going to be trying to outmaneuver anything, so the pneumatic control assist and the emergency control system are neither here nor there. Engine cooling for 10 extra seconds of boost, provided you have some, and I think it's important to have an engine restart on here, but if you are concerned about speed, you do have the option of the improved mixture control. Universal ammunition, you could load gold, but of course I never do. So, that's the consumables. Let's talk about pilot skills. As this is a premium aircraft, I use it as a crew trainer. I haven't got a specific pilot for it, and currently I've got my Ki-94-I pilot in here. But if you were building a pilot for this, probably the first skill I'd go for is the aerodynamics expert to increase the effect of either the uprated engine or the combined injection boost system that you're likely to have mounted. I wouldn't bother with the aerobatics expert. That is suitable for the Dash 2. It's not really suitable for this aircraft. And it's all about the weaponry, so I would be concentrating on Marksman 1 and Marksman 2 as soon as possible. So probably go Marksman 1 when I had 2 free skill points, put on the Engine Guru temporarily, and then as soon as I had a 3rd skill point, I'd go for Marksman 2. And then probably I'd build up Engine Guru 1 and Engine Guru 2. Quite an interesting skill here. Cruise flight increases the view range by 20% in engine thrust and top speed. I know there are people who like this. Another good choice is resilience, but that would definitely probably be after these 4 skills here, and that's a long way in the future. As a crew trainer, you probably put your Japanese pilots in here and build them fairly similarly, although for the lower tier Japanese heavies, maneuverability is something that you do have, and therefore you might be seeking to have aerobatics expert, even though it's not suitable for this aircraft. Okay, that's the pilot skills. Let's go and see how this aircraft performs not in 1, but 2 battles. Before we discuss strategy and tactics on the map for the first battle, I want to mention that both replays you're going to see are natively recorded. They're not World of Warplanes replays, which means that the gun sight or reticle will be accurately aimed and you'll be able to see me entering sniper mode. The disadvantage is that the movement of the aircraft will sometimes seem jerky. Let me know if you've got a view on whether you prefer one or the other in the comments below. So the map for the first battle is Asian border. It's the point of no return variant, and what we have are 5 sectors laid out in the 5 spots of a die configuration. There's a central garrison, which tactically is important because it provides easy access to all the other sectors, but otherwise it has no strategic value of its own. On one axis we have a pair of military bases, one near each spawn. These are the strategically important sectors on the map because the possession of these then fires rockets at other sectors to try and flip them to your team, provided your team doesn't go there and die. We see that all too often. And then on the other axis we have a pair of make-weight garrisons just conveying the standard 3 resources every 5 seconds. So in a tight battle, the way to win this is to hold these 3 sectors for longer than the enemy holds them. If you're going to dominate the battle, and particularly if you have this central garrison, you might be able to mount an attack on the enemy military base, and if you can, you should. We look at the order of the battle. I'm top tier in my Ki-94-I, and then we have a Ki-93, the Tech Tree Japanese aircraft, and an F-7F Tiger Cat, the American Tech Tree heavy. And then making up the numbers, that's a little bit unfair, my good friend Marcus. But unfortunately for him, he's down-tiered in a Spitfire in a battle where he's alongside 3 heavies on his own side. And then on the enemy side, they also have a Ki-93. They have a Bf-109G, which of course is a Tier 7 aircraft. And then a pair of Fisher Eagles XP-75s. So the enemy has the extra Tier 7 aircraft. Could be a tricky battle. Let's see how it worked out. So, as we enter battle, the first business is to take care of the military base off to the right. And military bases are defended by a pair of air defence heavies and nothing else, apart from the AA of course, which is going off alarmingly around me. I declined to shoot at the first heavy. I want to make sure where the second one is. And then because they're air defence heavies, I am able to turn with them. First one succumbs to the firepower of the Ki-94-I. Doesn't take long, as you saw. And that's with the setup with only 857 DPS. Think what you might do with the setup for 1100. And we have our military base, and we've got it before the enemy. Well, actually, no, we've more or less got it at the same time as the enemy. And they've also taken their local garrison, which we haven't. In fact, was nowhere near taking it. That said, I'm going to try and get to the enemy military base is the preference, but to do that we've got to get through the middle first, preferably take it. The Mustang turns right into the heavy guns and is actually pretty lucky to survive as well as he did. He's lost his engine. And my teammates finish him off, and they've done enough to take the central sector. And what I want to do is try and get to that military base, as I've just said. And I've just spotted a bomber, which is food and drink. I've spotted a second. Now, I always take the aircraft line astern when there's 2 coming at me. But in this case, I probably shouldn't have. I should have probably taken the first bomber. I miscalculated just how fast these bombers could travel. The weaponry makes very short work of that bomber, and then I have to work fairly hard to get to within range for the second. Now fortunately in this particular battle I had the long range gun barrels, providing extra range. So I was able to shoot the bomber from slightly further away than I would normally, and then I make a mistake, I turn straight into a heavy, and now I've got to run. That's an XP-75, he's a lot more manoeuvrable than I am, and of course now he's got me in his sights, he's not going to let go. Trying to use my speed to get away from him. I'm not really succeeding, and I'm going to lose the aircraft. So theoretically, my Ki-94 is slightly faster than this XP-75, but it's not fast enough to get away from him under boost. So we spawn back in. We have the 3 sectors that I discussed at the start of the battle in the strategy and tactics section, but it's not unusual for a close battle to result in that central sector swapping hands frequently. And indeed it just has. Trying to decide which target out of 5 I should go for first. And I decide I'm clear to go for the bombers. Apart from this aircraft being very good at wrecking bombers, it's the right thing to do in terms of not letting them get to the military base. Get within range and then I begin to puddle this bomber, and you see it doesn't last very long, especially when we have two heavies on it. Now, the military base has flipped the local garrison belonging to the enemy, so we're temporarily up 3-2 again. I'm still not that interested in this particular sector. I wanted to go for the ground attack there and then saw heavy. Put quite a lot of shots into him. Have a look back, he's lost his engine, so I can swing for him. He can't get back to me as quickly as he would like. He's done a pretty good job of it, but I have got my guns on him. And down he goes. And the XP-75 has got far less DPS than the Ki-94-I, so given he was already damaged, I was confident I could take him out. And we've taken back that central sector. Now, you tell me where that damage just came from. That's bird strike, as I call it. I lost my engine when there were no aircraft around and no AA. Having repaired it, and having seen the bombers, I go after them again. Size up the next one. Cripple it. We're taking out the engine and the pilots. Come back in to finish it off. And there we go. Now what's coming in? Pair of multi-rolls. Right, in fact it's one multi-roll and the BF-109G, which unfortunately I don't quite do as much to as I would have liked. Now I've lost quite a lot of health and I don't think I'm going to get away from this guy, and indeed I don't. And we spawn in for the second time. Now I decide to make sure of the garrison, our local garrison, although I'm pretty sure that provided my aircraft don't drive we're going to take it. And then I change my mind and head for the centre. You see one of the XP-75s is on low health. Nonetheless, he's managed to take that central sector again. And this time I finish him off in the first pass. I think that's the same one as I dealt with last time over the centre. Seeing the bomber, it's important that we don't lose our military base. And the other bomber is ahead of him, so there's a long pursuit ahead. I'm gradually tracking him down. Need to be at 2,000 feet with the current configuration of this aircraft to land my shots. Nearly. And I open up around about 1900. Severely damage the bomber. And then finish him off. The other bomber has been disposed of, and those bombers won't be coming back, or at least certainly the one I just shot down won't be coming back because the score line has arrived. Choices here, and I decide that I can head towards the garrison, but more importantly I've seen a ground attacker as well, so I may very well try and shoot that down on the way. Military base will probably flip that garrison, as we've got no aircraft there, and provided there are ground targets, it should do the job that's necessary. So go looking for the ground attacker. And although there's a multi-roll on it, I go in to make sure. The multi-roll breaks off because he's got too close, but I'm not too close. A few shots, then a few more, and that's the end of the ground attacker. In the meantime, we have taken the central sector. See another ground attacker. Meat and drink for me. Our military base should take the garrison shortly. Now the ground attacker does what all ground attackers should do in that situation. tries to ram me, certainly head at me to bring its weaponry to bear. Even in this flying brick of an aircraft I'm able to easily avoid. Now the ground attacker is in serious trouble and disappears. And that brings through the Hero of the Sky notification. And that's largely because I've taken a high number of bombers and ground attackers. I see the Ki-94-I. Perhaps with a bit better shooting here, I might have done more damage, and that would have helped in what happens next. He doesn't immediately swing for me, but then he does turn, and of course he's got a long-range cannon. And we end up with mutual destruction to end the game. First place on the team, Hero of the Sky, Winged Legend, and very nearly 15,000 personal points. And you saw how destructive that weaponry was. Right, let's take a look at the outcome of this first battle. And it's a 5 chevron battle, or a grade 1 heavy fighter. That grossed 246,272 credits, or silver if you prefer, of which more than 61,000 came from the premium account bonus. And on the expenses side, we shelled out 9,750 credits for repairing the aircraft 3 times. Prepaid consumables were used here, so no expenses for those. Aircraft experience of 9,638. The base figure is 3,160. The premium account bonus 1,500 or thereabouts, as you can see, and then boosters and liveries, etc. for the rest of that figure. Talking of boosters, don't get too excited by this 1,924 free experience. The vast majority of that has come from those boosters. No tokens on this occasion, but a couple of epic achievements, a Winged Legend and a Hero of the Sky. Personal score tab. We can see that 2 of the class-specific missions were complete. The third one was 4/5 complete, hence the 5 chevrons, and we got 14,980 personal points. 2 sectors captured. Probably wasn't quite aggressive enough in this battle. 13 aerial targets destroyed, 8,521 damage, and 26 critical hits. Lost the aircraft 3 times, including a nothing loss right at the end of the battle. 380 capture points, and that was split 240 for defending, 140 for attacking. And turning to the team score tab. That was enough for first place across both teams by chevrons, not by personal points. That was second place. And then a good effort from the S7F and the KI-93. I didn't notice this during the battle, but my good friend Marcus can't have really enjoyed that with 6 heavies in the battle. So well done for sticking in there, Marcus. Good to fly alongside you. On the opposing side, excellent personal points tally from the KI-93. Good effort from the XP-75, and also particularly notable effort from the BF-109G, again fighting alongside 6 heavies. This was a tight battle. I was pleased to win it. And before I talk about map strategy and tactics for the second battle, there's a salutary lesson to be learned from this replay, and that is that just because you get high personal points and because you get a Hero of the Sky, it does not mean that you've flown your aircraft well, and you'll see what I mean by the end of the battle. We're on Northern Bridgehead. It's a 4-sector map. The variant is Cold Skies, and the sectors are laid out roughly in the shape of an inverted Y. In the centre there's a forward airstrip. That allows you to spawn there, which is of some value. However, it is not a repair airbase, and you cannot select a different aircraft of the same tier if you're destroyed, so it's not as useful as it might be. In an axis about the forward airstrip, there are 2 command centres, one local to each spawn point. These are the strategically important sectors because in addition to conveying the resources every 5 seconds, 3 of them, you will be able to call in bomber flights if you possess this sector, which will attack enemy sectors for you. And then off to the right as we're looking at it, there is a make-weight garrison. And the way to win this battle is really to certainly take command of your command centre, try and hold the forward airstrip for longer than the enemy, and if you hold the forward airstrip, you will probably be able to take the enemy's command centre. If we look at the order of battle, we can see again I'm top tier in my Ki-94-I, and I have an F4U1 Corsair at tier 6 for company, and the enemy has a Ki-102. A manoeuvrable heavy, so I want to watch out for that, even though it's a whole tier lower than me, and also a Mustang 1A, which could be severely threatening to me as well. So, on the whole, even though I'm the tier 7, you could certainly call this match balanced and possibly just favouring the enemy because these 2 aircraft are very good counters for mine. Let's see how the battle developed. So, it's straight to the command centre and try and secure it as quickly as possible. Now, command centres are only defended by light fighters, air defence aircraft. So we sized up the first of them. Conveniently, they're flying away from me in a straight line. As they swing round, I take aim at one and inconveniently almost entirely miss it. Very nearly entirely missed the second one as well, although when we look back we actually see that I took the engine out, which means it can't turn to pursue. That allows me to gain height and then flip the aircraft over at a distance and come back for the P-40. There he is in front of my guns, and there he goes down. The next P-40 distracted me. I was thinking about using my ordnance. I couldn't get in position to drop it. I can see there are incoming red aircraft. I decide to still swing and try and use a bomb, but I hurry and I misplace it. And the result of that is that even though I hurried, I very nearly threw the aircraft into the ground and I didn't destroy their target. Very nearly finish off the P-40 that conveniently flies at me, and then my team finally secure this sector. Decide to go for the multi-roll that I saw coming in a few moments ago and dispatch it very efficiently. The Ki 102 bot that flew in has now flown off. Spot my first bomber. But by this time the enemy have secured both the airfield and their command centre. And that's the first of the bomber squadrons. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to show you this video. It's what can happen when the enemy has a command centre with this aircraft. Get up to the A-26B. Managing the weapons, and that's the first bomber kill. And the enemy has now gone on to take the Makeway garrison as well, so they're 3-1 up. And at this point I should have been reading the warning signs and deciding that I was going to have to be more aggressive to win this battle. And instead what I do is I fly towards the bomber flight for the express purpose of making sure that our command centre is not taken. As I'm flying towards it, I see a Dornier 217M, and I decide to take that out. And already we're a grade 1 fighter, simply because we've taken down a couple of bombers. The A-26 appears again. Bomber flight's a long way away, so I can afford to go for this. I was hoping I might shoot it down over the airfield. Alas no, he escapes. We have taken the airfield anyway, and here we see the value of having a first aid kit in the aircraft. I lost my pilot there and was able to put him straight back in, and I assure you, if you lose your pilot and you cannot heal him, shooting with this aircraft becomes very tediously difficult. So as we've taken the centre, I've decided that I can continue to defend the command centre by taking out the bomber flight. I'm having a good look at the situation. I'm not too concerned at the moment. Very nearly finish off that aircraft. I spot a bomber coming in behind it, so I decide to climb for that. I'll come back for the bomber flight afterwards. More gun management. A reminder, this is with the 857 DPS setup that I had, which during the setup of the aircraft I demonstrated could be increased a lot, back to 1101, and I think I may have. Well, either I shot down my own aircraft there, or more likely flew into the back of the bomber. Go towards the side. I'm conscious we cannot afford to lose this command centre, so I want to take out this bomber flight, and I've got the perfect air trial to do it. So I will. And having taken out the bomb flight, at this point things look rosy. We've actually got 3 sectors. However, as you saw, the airfield has almost entirely flipped back to the enemy. Another bomb's coming in. Have to avoid what looked like a potential ram, although it did actually choose to swing away at the... When I get behind it. And the tier 6 goes down. There's still 3 sectors to 1 up. I've held the airfield for the moment, so I feel confident that I can continue to go for bombers and make sure that this command centre is locked down. But now we've lost the airfield. And as you've begun to realise, I've spent the entire game farming bombers. And by doing so, I've now got up to a grade 4 fighter. And for variety's sake, I decided to go down for a ground attacker. I'll be a little bit careful with the ground attackers. There are some of them that are more manoeuvrable than this aircraft. And that one's not going to outmanoeuvre me because I've destroyed it. Bomber flight is nearly on top of the command centre. There's also the A-26B as well, who's nearest to me. Go for that. Managed to shoot it down without shooting at my teammate there, and I've left it too late to go for the bomber flight, which has delivered its payload. And I'm now being chased by a multi-roll. It's injured the pilot, so I put him back in. Multi-roll is being taken on by the Corsair, and the Corsair shoots him down, which actually helps save the command centre, although it's now under serious threat. Seriously damaged the bomber. It blows up, which is just as well, so we continue to hold the command centre. And here's where I've made the tactical error. At this point I should have been more aggressive and tried to set about removing the enemy from the centre. But instead I continue to farm bombers and try to protect our command centre. And we're behind. This is the wrong decision. Now, that said, it's probably likely, had I not stayed here, that we would have lost this command centre. Damned if you do, and damned if you don't. Here the sky badge goes through. Now we've got a bomber flight coming in. I don't feel that I can afford to risk breaking away. I want to get at least 2 of these bombers down, otherwise we're going to lose this command centre. It's going to be a tight thing anyway. I'll be lucky to get 2 of them down. Lots of damage on the first one. Another one is severely damaged, so I can shoot at that immediately afterwards. Decide to shoot at one that I'm further behind, but which is also seriously damaged. That's down. I'm too late with this one. I do destroy it, and in fact that we have done enough to hold to the command centre, but the enemy during that time has been able to take the garrison, and I have left it too late to leave this command centre. I should have let it go, and if we'd lost it, so be it. But by not going to another sector soon enough, I have definitely lost this game. So too late we fly into the airbase. See a Typhoon that we can take on. That flips the airbase. Fly to get away from what's behind me, which blows up. That's an air defence aircraft, but it's too late. And despite the fact that I am well on top by personal points and I have a 5 chevron battle, I also have a defeat. And that's down to bad tactics and bad tactical awareness. Okay, let's take a look at the outcome of this second battle, and as we can see, it's a 5 chevron battle or a grade 1 heavy fighter. That grossed 239,645 credits, of which nearly 60,000 came from the premium account bonus. I can tell you without looking in the message box, there were no expenses, so this is also the net figure. I didn't lose the aircraft during the battle, and I was using prepaid consumables. Aircraft experience of 3,777 in total, broken down 1,239 as the base figure, premium account bonuses you can see there, and then other bonuses for liveries and boosters, etc. Pre-experience again artificially high, boosted, 752, of which the base is 157 and the premium account bonus is 30, and the largest part comes from the presence of those boosters. 2 tokens, first medals of the day, Hero of the Sky badge and Winged Legend. Personal score tab, we can see that 2 of the 3 class specific missions were complete and one of them was 4/5 complete, therefore 5 chevrons. Nice personal points tally of 18,420, but a salutary lesson there, of course. High personal points does not mean a winning game. Good tactics means a winning game. 2 sectors captured, 19 aerial targets destroyed, 17,705 damage, reflecting the fact that a lot of those aircraft that were shot down were bombers, 31 critical hits, didn't lose the aircraft, 340 capture points, this time 240 for defending sectors and 100 for attacking. Not aggressive enough. On the team score tab, we can see that was enough for first place, tied on chevrons, but clear first by personal points. And on the enemy side, KO-102 might have got fewer personal points, but clearly had superior tactics, and he won the game, and he'll be pleased with that. That brings me to the end of this extended look at the Tachikawa Ki-94-I, and I think what we've learned from this video is that the weaponry is verging on the extraordinary, and this is a fantastic bomber, hunter and killer. However, it's not particularly fast compared to the rest of the Tier 7 heavies, let alone Tier 8s that it could very well face, and it's not particularly manoeuvrable, and that makes it a high skill cap aircraft to fly. Position it well in the battlefield and you will do well. Position it badly and it will be unfortunate. Well, I hope you found that useful, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q signing out.